Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. William White. Yes, once again it is time for the official geologist of the North American Dogman Project to stop into the Fox Den for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Yes, we have a good one tonight, but please allow me to feed. Much better. I do apologize. The urges to feed become overwhelming when you've slept for so long. Yet, without further ado, it is time for William and I to take a walk into the darkness. My creatures, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Tonight, we have William White, the geologist for the North American Dogman Project, that took time out of his busy schedule to sit down and help us get some more scientific evidence as to what the heck is going on with the Dogman. How you doing tonight, William?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. It's always great to get another North American Dogman Project member and somebody that's extremely educated to sit down and figure this out with me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad to be here. Absolutely.
Excellent. So tonight we were going to dive into some of the historical aspects that you had referenced to me about some of the Amish historical werewolf type history and some other stuff. So if you want to start rolling, let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in some of the research I was doing, I came across some early Pennsylvanian, and it doesn't just cover Pennsylvania, but Northern Maryland, some of those New England states, lore about a couple cryptids that the early settlers, including the Anabaptists, the Amish, that they came across, or perhaps maybe even brought with them. And so that's one of the interesting theories I've been kind of stretching my brain around to see if maybe these things follow certain groups of people, certain behaviors. So originally, the Dutch settlers and the Amish, they're a mixture of Dutch and German. They kind of come from that border region, Swiss as well. They believed in this, and I think to some extent it's still rumored to be seen around there, but this kind of fantastic Lovecraftian sort of monster called the Snallygaster. And that's more of an anglicized version of its original name. But the Snallygaster is like this absolutely demonic, evil entity. And it has its origins over in Europe. And so then when they came here, they continued to encounter it or think they saw it or, have issues with it. Well, the Snallygaster has a mortal enemy. The mortal enemy of the Snallygaster is called the Dwyo, or also known as the Hexenwolf. And the Dwyo, or the Hexenwolf, is an upright canid. And that also has its origins in Northern Europe. Dwyo, in this case, in their lore, this Hexenwolf it doesn't it's not necessarily an evil being. It doesn't necessarily attack their livestock or give them trouble, but in fact is in mortal combat, constant eternal war with the Snallygaster. So it's just kind of coincidental that one of the areas that has some of the best and the most prolific Dogman sightings is Pennsylvania, because before anyone said the word Dogman, a couple 250 years ago, these settlers were coming over there with their own legends of essentially a Dogman type being. Now, how that relates to folk magic, and maybe they brought it with them, is a lot of people, when they think of the Amish, they think of a kind of an idyllic sort of society of people living off the land, one with nature. They've gotten rid of the complications of modern life, and instead they just focus on their religion and on more or less the basic things, the simple things that man needs, shelter, community, faith, food, etc. And that certainly is part of their lifestyle. I grew up around them. But another aspect, little talked about and discussed, is they're prolific practitioners of what's known as folk magic. And folk magic is not necessarily evil, and generally not viewed as evil by those who practice it, but it's simple things like, charms on your door to ward off evil, herbs hanging around your neck to heal a sickness, burying coins in a field for, a bountiful crop harvest, that sort of things. And it wasn't just the Amish that did this. I mean, early English settlers in New England, especially in the lower classes, the less educated classes, they were well known for doing this too. It's just that today the Amish kind of still live that old-fashioned lifestyle and have some of those old-fashioned beliefs, whereas the rest of us have moved on somewhat from that. So one of my thoughts is perhaps that the Amish, in continuing to practice these folk magics, maybe it's possible, if Dogman is not necessarily a corporeal being, or at least in not all instances is corporeal, but maybe more of an entity, maybe they brought it with them. What do you think about that?
That is super educational right there. I had heard bits and pieces of that, but the elaboration was extremely excellent right there. I appreciate that. And that really makes me think of some of the other spots like the Rougarou, where supposedly that kind of came over as well. I don't know, either within the followers or, like you said, tracking them or somewhat in the area. And I've also potentially heard about some Amish settlers near like the LBL area too. And you have those type of activities down there. And that makes me scratch my head a little bit and wonder, as you said, they're not diving into the majority of them, anything that would be considered taboo. But a lot of those practices, indigenous cultures also had practices similar to that. But then they also had their darker sides with the skinwalkers and the shapeshifters. And now it makes me potentially wonder the same thing is, because I've heard reports of in Amish territories, potential dogmen or werewolves or shapeshifters. And it makes me wonder if you have a select group of them that have maybe dove into some of the darker sides to be able to shapeshift and transform. What are your potential thoughts on that aspect?
So now this is all pure speculation because, this is conjecture, right? Putting things together, little tidbits here and there. I have never heard anyone say that directly. However, I have heard plenty of stories about, especially when in English, see, they refer to the non-Amish as English, primarily because we speak English, and in their communities, they speak a form of Dutch-German admixture called Pennsylvania Dutch. But anyway, when an English kind of gets on the wrong side of them, sometimes that English has some supernatural problems, like poltergeist activity in their house, crop failures, bad things happening, and word is that some Amish, and I'm sure it goes against, their beliefs and their religion, but some Amish practice what you're talking about, the more dark side of folk magic, right? Instead of something to make them recover from an illness faster, they're now, performing a ritual to curse someone who has wronged them, or at least who they view as having wronged them. So now this is where the conjecture comes in. Yeah, maybe there is kind of a darker arts, sort of subgroup of them that have kind of delved deeper into this. And yeah, perhaps some of these old world cryptids followed them over here like that. It's interesting you brought up the Loup-garou or the Rougarou. I lived in Louisiana for a couple years, and the whole history there is very fascinating. The original settlers, the French settlers there, they came from, before they were in Louisiana, they were in Quebec in Canada. And, before then they were in France, but generally, they'd come over for either economic reasons or, for religious persecution. Well, then when, Britain took over Canada after some of the conflicts and wars of the 18th century, the British didn't want this particular group of troublesome French there, and so they shipped them off down to the Louisiana Territory, where they settled Louisiana, and brought with them the legend of the Rougarou, which originally was called Loup-garou, which is more of a French word, and the Rougarou is kind of a Creole sort of version of it. So yeah, exactly. There's another example of people who brought their monsters with them one way or another.
That's nightmare fuel. Yeah, the curse. That's actually intriguing how you phrase that, because that makes me want to also get your opinion on how you feel about it. I personally think there's a big difference between the Dogman and werewolves, as well as Wendigos and shapeshifters.
Mm-hmm.
From the education I have been granted, Wendigos are definitely a lot different. Skinwalkers, too. If you look at the Native American word, that means that a lot of the times it says he or she that walks on all fours or being on all fours. It doesn't refer to them actually changing into a crazy monster. It's usually you have to get the pelt of the animal. Not saying someone could not get the pelt of a quote unquote dogman, but I would assume it would be much easier to get the pelt of a coyote or a bear or
a
something.
wolf. Yeah.
Yes, than a gargantuous dogman. So I fall in the category of thinking there's definitely a difference there. And even with some of the things we just referred to, I think werewolves and such it's more of a curse, where I think the dogman, if we look back at some of the ancestral potential relatives, there's something there that solidifies that they stay in that form, that they're not going back and forth. Like, I fall into the category, I don't believe a dogman could shapeshift into a human. Yet, if in theory a skinwalker was able to get the pelt of a dogman, then they could take on the form of the dogman and go back to your human form. But as I said, I fall into the category of the dogman being an actual being. And how do you
Right.
feel about that?
I'm undecided. I bounce back and forth almost every day. To an extent, I subscribe to the idea that maybe, and then once again, this is maybe, because I don't know anything, but maybe all of these entities, the white crawlers, the Wendigo, the forest mimics, that may be the same thing as the white crawlers, the dogman, they may all be the same sort of spiritual entity that takes a different form. Sometimes that sounds like a really good idea to me, and it's like this, the unifying theory of cryptozoology, kind of like Einstein was looking for a unifying theory, through string theory. And then other times, it makes more sense that it's a biological creature, that, maybe it was created artificially by some other higher intelligence, or maybe it just evolved just like, everything else they think evolved on Earth. I don't know. So to summarize it, I'm totally undecided. I go back and forth.
I appreciate it. Excellent answer. What if I suggested potentially to play, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Go ahead, yeah.
If, like, say, hellhounds and, as you were speaking, manifestations, yeah, I think a lot of those, you're right, spot on, because people will say sometimes they see these wolf-like entities that, their lights shine through them, and yeah, right there tells you potentially it could be more paranormal based on the hellhound and those type of aspects. But then you have the others that's on the four-wheeler right there, pull up their shotgun and blast this thing,
Right.
see the blood splatter come over, see it spin, cough, yell, run up the tree, and then come back at them. And then you have others seeing them opening your doors, and that seems to be more of a, I guess, a hands-on, like you or I, like a physical,
Right.
I'm here type. Yeah, so that's why I think there's a big difference.
Yeah, we may be dealing with two separate things, or maybe more than two things, because, yeah, you've got the dogman creatures that people feel like are feeding on their fear, right? And you've got the stories of people who are in great emotional distress. They broke up with their girlfriend, or, they lost a loved one. They're just depressed for whatever reason, they go out to the woods, and then boom, there's a Dogman there, right? And it's like it's feeding off of their misery. And that to me feels much more supernatural, like getting way off topic. But there are some people who believe that there are entities that feed off of our negative emotion called archons, almost like it's a manifestation of an archon. But then there's, yeah, exactly right, just like you said, other stories where they bleed, they eat, they leave dung. Yeah, so it's like,
Yep. No, and that's all so true, and that's why it's super interesting. And I know that's how you, Jody, and everyone that really started firing it up broke it down into the potential paranormal, the actual extraterrestrial, or the physical. And that's why when I dive into the quote unquote Dogman triangle, I try to explain that to people. Is I tried to look at the aspect of it potentially being a physical entity. And when I do get a call of someone saying, hey, the flashlight was going through it, I talk to them, but I suggest I forward them on to somebody that's more potentially into understanding skinwalkers or the Wendigos, someone like Ryan Tremblay, who's a cryptozoologist. When someone tells me, hey, we hit it with a car, it spun off, or we shot it, or we found it going back to this cave system, we have these tracks, those are the ones where I sit down and I'm like, okay, what do I have here that science can't really
Yeah.
thwart me aside?
Can I tell you a cool story real quick? That hitting the car thing reminded me of something.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm a business owner, and one of my businesses involves transportation. Several years ago, it was about 6 years ago, one of my drivers had picked up a passenger, and they were driving down a country road here in Southwest Ohio, and both of them, I spoke to both of them said that they felt this impending sense of doom out of nowhere. It was early morning, so it was dark out. They said they felt like they were going to just out of the blue. We're going to, this is the end of the world or whatever. And then seconds later, something, and they didn't get a good look at it, but something smashes into the side of the car. They were driving a little Toyota Yaris and bounced off and was gone. I've seen that car. I looked at that car. I looked it over. There was blood on it. And it was smashed from nose to trunk on that driver's side that got hit by whatever it was. But it's just a really strange story. And I'm not saying it's Dogman. I don't know that it was Dogman. But it's weird that both of them had this like supernatural, almost premonition of doom right before it happened,
No, that's super interesting as well. And as you stated, they hit something that
I saw the evidence, yeah.
Yeah, that obviously injected fear into them. Recently, I've been doing a ton of looking into cave systems and, just, hey, where people are missing and just trying to come up with some thoughts of, well, what is actually happening in these areas? And I do know for a fact that we don't go into cave systems too much, so we know less about that than we do the ocean and outer space. And
yeah, I'm terrified of caves, man. I'll stay out of caves.
And then I also know recently, by mistake, the Smithsonian discovered a massive cave system that they happened to, like I said, just crack into. And there was a ton of human and animal bones in there where hyenas were dragging them back in there and feeding on them.
Okay, yeah.
And we know North American, European cave hyenas existed. And also, when we look back in the past, you have the Amphicenoidae, which is not a bear nor a canine, because bears aren't either. It's a tweener.
Right.
Yep. And then that's one of the sightings we hear, bear man. And then you have the baboon type looking werewolf. Well, then you have the Dinopithecus, which literally would have looked like a raging werewolf type baboon with pointing up ears and about the size of a person. And why would that not potentially have come up across the land bridge while other animals did? And then you have the type 3 looking hyena dogmen. And I really think out of all the animals I just named, hyenas are probably the most hardy. And that was installed into me by our environmentalist, Colleen. And she was really explaining how they, in theory, could easily survive anywhere. And we don't know anything about the caves. So people are missing in these cave system areas. I am willing to, there's no guarantees in life, but I am almost willing to throw out a 90% chance that a lot of these people, remains, things are in these caves. And what is taking them? Good question. But people are reporting seeing these canine-like creatures, these type 3 hyena-looking dogmen. And we know cave hyenas existed. So if they are still alive, they could easily be taking people into caves where they would be living in these type of areas anyhow, and we're not going to find them. How do you feel about any of that?
So yeah, when I think about Dogman as a biological being, I've always leaned towards some form of hyena or something similar because people describe him like that. They describe an animal with longer forelimbs than hind limbs. Which, I mean, what do you think about? I think about hyena instantly when I hear that. The other thing is canines. Canines. If you find a track and it has 4 toes, it's a canine. Well, all even fish have 5 digits. If you look at their fins, right? Pretty much all vertebrae on Earth have 5 digits. Well, where's the dog's 5th digit? It's the dew claw. It's further up its ankle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a vestigial organ. It doesn't use it anymore. In fact, on domesticated dogs, oftentimes they get snipped off because they can get infected and cause them problems, snagged on things. So when people talk about a dog man, one of the most common descriptions is this creature upright grabbing onto something. It has raccoon-like hands. It has a hand. It has an opposable thumb of some sort. Well, a dog can't have an opposable thumb, even 10 million years from now through evolution, because that 5th digit, it's gone. It's basically, it's like our appendix, right? It is almost out of the evolutionary pool. However, a hyena doesn't have a dew claw. It's still got all 5 toes on its paws. So it's much more likely that some variant of a hyena could have an opposable thumb. The other thing about canines is even wolves, even the biggest mastiffs, chunky, muscular dogs, their front limb strength and coordination is just not there. Dogs are awkward when they try to use I've got a golden doodle. He's super smart, and he tries to use his front legs to interact with things, but he's as clumsy as everything else. Well, look at a cat. Pick something up with the paws, with like a ball of yarn or something. Cats are nimble, and a big cat like a lion or a puma or a tiger, they're super strong in their forebody because they use those their front legs to grab onto things, with their claws. So yeah, I think a lot of the behavior, a lot of descriptions of a dog man actually are not canine at all. People, I think, maybe get distracted by how the head looks, but are in fact much, if anything, more feline, or perhaps hyenid. Anyway, hyenas are more or less kind of like that bear dog you were describing. They're an in-betweener. They're one of species. They have traits like a feline, somewhat like a canine, but actually biologically, genetically, I believe they're more closely related to felines. So
yes, 100%. Preach, my friend, please. And what's a big thing for me is a lot of people think that we're talking about the Hollywood werewolf that is just super comfortable bipedally. And I don't agree with that. I think, let me rephrase this. I don't think, all right, I know because of the way our tracker has looked at some of the patterns and also some of the images I've been able to look at, and Jody and others, when this thing is going, when people actually decide to take more than just one footprint, okay, let me advise anyone out there, please, 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 if you are taking evidence, get more than one footprint, show us some stride length where the actual environment looks like. But back to what I was talking about is you can see in the quote unquote these dogman encounters where people see them running away, they're going from quadrupedal to bipedal and back and forth. And now picture, I believe they are more comfortable than, like, say, a bear on their back legs, but picture how a bear is running, right? It's got the longer front legs and the shorter back legs. So if a bear wants to then push itself up, what's it do? It takes its momentum, pushes itself up. And if you look at how a bear takes on another bear, they start off on the ground, but if that bear can't overpower you, they want to get up and look bigger, like, okay, same thing. This dog man, potentially, or a hyena, whatever you want to say, is going to be more comfortable on all fours, because any animal, if we're going to approach it in this theory, is going to have more speed with 4 legs versus 2. Yet, if it pushes itself up, now it's got some girth, and it's going to look more menacing as it looks into your window and it tries to open it up. But I don't think it's just going to be able to walk around for like 10 miles on its back legs. And that's why when you look at the way the tracks go, it's going back and forth. And I think as it's running, same thing, it's pushing itself up and back and forth. So sometimes when people are seeing it bipedally, it's only across the road for a second. But if
Right.
you had more of than a 5 second clip of that, and you actually got to watch it for a minute, 2 minutes, it's going to drop down and back and forth. How do you feel about that?
No, I agree. The one time I may have seen a Dogman, maybe. I'm not going to go out there and say I definitely saw it, but it was weird. The creature I saw was on all fours, and based on everyone's stories that I've heard, it always struck me that it sounded like they preferred to move on all fours, for long distances, for speed, whatever, and they could get up on two legs, but people would typically encounter them on all fours, and then they'd hear the joints pop or whatever, those stories, and then it would stand up on two legs, right? So yeah, I agree with you. I think that at least the more biological version that we're discussing probably is much more natural on all fours, but also has the ability, kind of like maybe, not that I'm saying it's a primate, but like a gorilla at the zoo. Gorillas can walk around just fine on two legs, but they prefer to go around on all four limbs.
Yes. I mean, I'm a dog man person, but I'm educated enough about Sasquatch. But you have a lot of the cases where they see the spider kind of crawl, I guess they
Yeah.
call it, with the
Mhm.
Sasquatch. So same thing. I mean, people are seeing them bipedal, but also they're using potentially all four limbs at times too. Because I mean, wouldn't they be able to crawl faster too, if in theory on all fours too, if they're capable of? I mean, so yeah, if you look at it like that, and I'm not trying to anyone out there, I'm open to everything because this is all in theory. I'm just trying to play devil advocate in regards of the scientific world isn't gonna ever look at just people saying, oh, we saw something manifest in front of us. They're just not going to,
No.
unfortunately. I need to show them like the tracks you've seen, the strange dens, things that are hands on that people can't really refute. I mean, a couple of biologists that are friends with Colleen, the environmentalist, looked at some of the tracks and they were like, oh, we've never seen anything like that.
Right.
And then we had a pack of coyotes get smoked by something. At first, the biologists thought, hey, maybe that was a cougar. But then, no, a cougar, like our tracker Nuxium says, isn't going to sit there and take on 8 coyotes.
It's not worth it to them. The risk versus reward is just not there. So
No,
yeah.
yes, even a black bear, same thing.
Yep.
Not that a black bear couldn't take on those, but like you said, the risk reward of them getting injured, the cougar smart is going to run up the tree and get away.
When an animal gets injured, I mean, it's a high chance it doesn't recover. There's a high chance that it's going to starve before it's healed, or it's going to get an infection. Yeah, getting injured in nature is bad juju, So animals avoid it if possible. They try to only take on what they think they can win.
100% again, preach. And I'm not the most familiar with animals that live in certain areas, which is why I defer to my environmentalist. And also, if I don't know like structures or potential magnetic fields that could be zapping someone's phone when they quote unquote say that, I would defer to you. And that's what I try to do. And just because I'm a journalist, and as I said, science is what I need to approach. And when people don't want to talk to me because I am a journalist, I'm not offended by that, but I have backup. Okay, I talk to my tracker here. Okay, he can tell you, look at this. This is a blue herring. Look how this squirrel's following here. Okay, you don't want to hear how potentially there's magnetic pole here. Well, you're going to talk to William now, and then etc. I have people with me that you can't really refute now when we want to approach it like that. And there is just so much substantial evidence about what's occurring that it needs to be put out there in a proper way. So I don't, like I said, I am very open minded about this. I just know that unfortunately, science, as far as I know, doesn't take paranormal as a scientific value. Whereas if I ever want to get someone potentially like a Jeff Meldrum, I know he's not interested, but I'm just saying a name like that to ever sit down, Survivor Man, just people that have an open mind, scientific backgrounds in anything that is relevant to what we're doing, just to look at it. I'm not trying to tell people, hey, this exists. Like I'm a healthy skeptic. I've never seen anything paranormal. All I know is people I respect and value have told me about seeing strange things. And I also know I have 530 pages in front of me, ranging from 290 BC with a cynocephali, talking supposedly to Alexander the Great, all the way up to what you just told me a second ago. And as I stated, someone I spoke to yesterday. Yeah, some of these sure are going to be misidentifications, and some are going to be, hopefully you'd like to not think, but prefabricated. But Then there's
Sure.
some that really can't be explained and that need to be looked at.
All it takes is for one of them to be legit, and there's thousands of them, right? You know, it's just one of those stories, and if there's thousands of them, I guarantee you, more than a few are legit. So
And just also, like you said, yeah, think how many have been lost in the wind as well. With just say, if people are afraid to talk, say you and I saw something in the past, and we talk with our friends group, and then you move away, I move away, I pass away, you pass, whatever, and then these reports just disappear. And that's why it's super important, like Jody was saying, and that's why I try to make sure everything that's verified I document, whether it's stuff that Linda Godfrey had done, Jody, or just things that are verified so that we can present these to people
mhm.
and show you, not you, but just anyone in the public that thinks this is a joke or thinks that quote unquote we're crazy. Well, here are missing people, here are cave systems, here are unknown footprints, here's unknown DNA, and here's a map of our sighting of unknown canine potential creatures, and you sandwich them all together, boom. Okay, well, explain that.
Mhm.
That doesn't make us crazy. To me, it makes people that ignore that type of things, they would be the ones that would be the fragile way to approach it mind frame wise, because you got to step outside of the box. Not you, just everyone though, like just
Yeah,
the public in general, to understand things. How do you
sure.
feel about that as we wrap this up?
Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah, I mean, my life has taken me many, many different paths, and I probably started off very orthodox in belief about the world, universe, science. I I remember this kid in my undergraduate program. He told all of us that he had seen Bigfoot come out of a cave when he was in the mountains, and we harassed him. We gave him the worst time in the world about it. Thinking back, I legit believe that he saw something like that. But what happened? He told a bunch of science students that he saw Bigfoot, and we just harassed him about it until finally he told us, "Yeah, no, I lied. I made that all up." So we'd leave him alone about it. So that's where I started off from, right? But life showed me over and over and over again that I don't know everything. In fact, I know almost nothing, and that's kind of switched on a section of my brain that's open to anything, at least entertaining it, at least for a few minutes or longer. So absolutely, people do just need to like set aside the dogma and just start exploring ideas.
That's why I really appreciate that about you, and also why I try to include you in as much as I can and just get your input on things, and why I have you here right now, and also why I encourage you to make sure you're a part of our new podcast we're doing at the North American Dogman Project, because it's super important just
Absolutely.
to take a look. Like I just said, I'm not trying to force feed anybody anything. I'm just trying to show what is presented, like the strange canines supposedly attacking people all across the country, or the singer that supposedly was by two coyotes up in Canada,
Yeah.
yet the coyotes were not even near her and had no human remains, etc. I'm
Well, I
just
mean,
trying.
geez,
Yeah,
have you seen a coyote? I mean, at most they're the size of a medium-sized dog, usually smaller. I mean, the idea of a coyote taking on a healthy, even a woman. Yeah, I mean, not saying women can't be strong and big, but I mean, obviously, on average, they're smaller than men, right? It's just, I mean, I don't know. Anytime I hear about stuff like that, I have to doubt a lot, you know.
yes, and it's super important that like you even take the time just to look at it, because if no one will even take the time, then we're not going to ever be able to get anywhere. And the problem also is, let's be real. So when it comes to UFOs, anyone in my eyes that doesn't take a second to even understand that, well, let's be real. The universe is almost endless as far as we know, and that's what we know. There's no way that humans are the best we've ever done, which, okay, that's for another day. But what I'm trying to get at is evidence wise, if people really want to go to poke, and people want to talk about UFOs and Bigfoot as the top cryptids, I could argue with the fact that I have just as much, and there's just as much evidence out there that others have, that Dogman could be above all that when it comes to actual evidence. And if we have already admitted that we do know extraterrestrial life exists, then there's not as much evidence for that as I said about what we have for Dogman. So I do just need people to have an open mind for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no, I take no sides. I'm a believer in Sasquatch. I'm very open to the idea of extraterrestrials, or they may not even be coming from outside, our planet.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of theories about that. And absolutely, I'm a believer in Dogman. So, yeah, I think we need to be a little less sectarian in how we approach the unknown and more open. Like, hey, yeah, if Bigfoot is a possibility, why can't upright canids be a possibility? Why can't whatever, lake monsters be a possibility? They all can be a possibility, until we eliminate that possibility. So,
And that's what we're here for. So, no, thank you so much for all your time and everything that you shared tonight with myself and the audience, because I know I learned a lot. And a lot of people like to say that I know a ton about this. And I always try to tell them the reason I know a lot is because I ask and I learn, and I want to learn from individuals that know more. So, thank you
oh man,
for.
you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, great stuff. So let me know when you get some more time, because I would love to get you back on. And also, like I said, within the next week here, I believe we're going to have a conference call about the new NADP podcast. So,
Hell yeah, lots of good
all
stuff
right.
happening.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm. And until the next one, stay safe out there.